happy from a city perspective or just people that don't like you?
Both. I'm used to the second.
Same.
Yeah, that's just my thing. It's mostly just my wife and.
Cause my wife and kids, they're you know, typical. They have something to do
I was
tonight.
just
Get out.
people were for the meeting, you know?
My daily rating from my family.
Sure. Get your audio feedback from them. Test. Okay, we're good.
Good start. All right, welcome everyone to the Administration of Public Works Committee meeting for Monday, April 29th. Currently 5:34, we'll get started. So first item on the agenda, the roll call.
Chair Garitano,
Here,
Councilmember Clark. Here. Councilmember Edens. Present. Councilmember Nyhan. Here. Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon. Councilmember Jaxi
here,
and Councilmember Hopper.
here.
Thank you.
Move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the approval of minutes for the March 2024 meeting. Can I get a motion for approval by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Jackson? Any questions, comments on the minutes? Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, just a note that on Old State Road, we did talk about bringing in the representative for this project in the last meeting for this meeting. I guess I'm wondering if that person is coming in?
Not tonight, but.
Okay. Okay, that was just a question. And then on the Turnberry, just for example, the notes on the Turnberry, I think it would be helpful if we kind of listed in the minutes the ratio of the vote. Like it was 4-1, I believe, and just to see that there was some opposition to, it wasn't a unanimous passing of that. Is that possible to add that to the minutes?
For that specific item? Or
For that item, but also for any item. I think it's when it just says it was approved, it was declared that the motion passed. It doesn't tell me if anybody was opposed to it.
Well, I think we'll have to check to see, we get guidance from the city attorney on how to do these and be consistent. But anytime there is a vote, if you ever feel that the record should reflect the votes, you can always request a roll call vote, and that will then list out all the votes. So, but I think the rest, I do think there's an attempt to try to be consistent.
When it's not a roll call, typically it's just the ayes have it or the nays have it. But if there is a roll call, that could always be requested for any of these. And some require.
So, I think that's the best way to handle it. So if there's ever a topic that you just feel you need to see that, you can always request that. All right, any other questions or comments? I don't see any, so we do have a motion for approval of the minutes. Bree, you got that captured down? Good. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain?
Abstain.
One abstention? The minutes are approved. Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, which is public participation. I do see we have several folks here in the room, so we do have a speaker card filled out. And Bree, if you could request that speaker to come up and speak to the group now, this would be good.
Mr. James Van Neck, right? Vanek, okay, sorry.
James Manick, Ward 7, Citizens for a Safer Old State, here to urge the passing of either option 1 or option 2. We see that, particularly with option 1, given the current finances of the county, what they're willing and able to pay at this point, given their short-term and long-term projections for their finances. Oh, just a myriad of other things. The finances are not there. They're not going to be available to, I think the ultimate solution to that portion of Old State at the bottom probably would be to widen, straighten, and put in guardrails, but that's just simply not going to happen. This is the high friction surface, good short-term bridge, if you call it that, to maybe a better solution down the road. The option two is the inclusion of the area further up Old State where it's flatter and not quite as sharp of turns, but still it's an unbelievable number of accidents right there by Bluffview Park. You wouldn't think it, it's almost amazing to me, the level of accidents there also. So I emailed you today and I gave you, out of a scale 1 to 10, I gave you 11 for the lower person right there. And a 9.5, not far behind for the Bluffview Park area. The other two areas, while it's needed, it's not needed as badly. I think we should save that money perhaps, and use that money for perhaps going towards matching funds for East-West Gateway for a roundabout at Ridge Road. And even entry to Fairhaven Estates is extremely dangerous. And those two areas need to be addressed before anything else, in my opinion. Probably in the opinion of a lot of other people within my group. So that's all I have. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Do we have anyone else that wishes to speak? And is there anyone online? Thank you. So that concludes our public participation. Thanks again for those comments. We're going to move into item number 4 on the agenda, which is administration. So we have 2 for information items. And again, these are for information, meaning no action is to be taken tonight. There are documents that provide updates on these 2 items here. So I'll just ask if you have anything to add that the committee needs to know pertaining to these 2 items.
I just wanted to give thank you, Chair Garatano. I just wanted to give everyone a heads up on the building repairs. There's gonna be a couple things that are going on here at City Hall that you might see in a couple weeks. We're gonna be digging 4 test pits in the rain garden in the back. So that might be a little invasive. It's just about 4 by 4 holes, but it's done for the just exploring that area, seeing how the water's going up against, well, how the water's draining. So this is part of the overall study with Geotech. We've already installed a piezometer on the west side of the building here that is going to monitor groundwater. We'll also be putting crack monitors. That's not pretty that invasive, but we also have to do a core slab sample in the community room itself. It'll be taken out, refilled, and then recarpeted after removal. But just kind of letting everyone know that there's a couple pretty invasive items that might be coming to City Hall. On top of that, there is also the leak repair RFP is out, and on May 17th, it will close out. Currently, we have not received a proposal, but we did have an interested party participate in the RFP meeting. So they showed strong encouragement that they would be submitting a bid. There could be some things in that proposal that are addressing potentially the dormers on the front of the building as well. So that'll be something that is brought to the ad hoc building committee and subsequently the Administration Public Works Committee. And then lastly, the staircase that is on the east side of the building here going into the back parking lot. During that last significant rainfall, it blew out the entirety of the rock that was in the back underneath supporting it. We've already seen it digress a little bit and on the side of that, on the side of the wall. So in this case, we have taken out the one piece of sidewalk and we will be lifting the staircase up and then re-supporting it. So that's something that we're currently doing some proposals for, but no matter what, the concrete slab, the sidewalk piece will be replaced since it was a trip hazard. Other than that though, more over to internet, we're covering both, Chair, in this update. On internet, phase one's been complete, so good news on that front. There's a lot of restoration that is still to occur. City's received all the invoices at this time. But that being said, we have not paid out on pretty much 6 of the total invoices, so there's quite a few houses that still need to have final inspections and get final approval to pay. So that's one piece, and now phase 2 as well, we just had a meeting with Spectrum and it was pretty productive. The list looked better. Melanie, our director, our Department of Planning right now is currently helping assist with consolidating the info they have and running it against the FCC data that's going on with the challenge program, if you've heard about it, with BEAD funding. We're running those across each other to just double check, but we should have a finalized list ready to go here soon where we'll be able to move forward with a phase 2 and get a quote. Just wanted to also provide an update from the meeting with Spectrum was that a significant development was that there are a lot of houses that are currently on the list for phase 2 that sit next to a coax structure. So their network that they have right now is coax. So they had asked me to pass the message on to the council of whether or not this phase 2 proposal, do we want an option that says just fiber all the way? Or do we want an option that says fiber when possible, when needed, and then coax when possible? So when it's a situation where the infrastructure, and it would be broken out after they've completed their work to actually put the plans together, they would come back and say, here are the areas that would be addressed with coax, and this is why. So it would show that infrastructure that's nearby. It would save a significant amount of dollars. They've made a pretty good argument that as long as it's not if you have to run over a 400-foot drop with coax, it could prove slower, but if it's a short amount of space in between, the signal's gonna run pretty good on coax as well. So it's going, overall, there could be a situation where, we're at around 500 houses after they did their report, and we're now cleaning that number up. You'll be presented all those houses, but that, if you do the math on that we've had inflation that has occurred, I'm thinking that it could very well exceed what we currently have put aside for internet. So just wanted to maybe think of some ideas what could lower the cost just a little bit so we can make sure all 500 homes get access.
All right, well, thank you for sharing those both updates there. So let's see if there are any questions pertaining to them. Maybe we'll address the building, if there's any building questions at this time. Joe?
When they redo or do the thing in here, are they gonna redo the whole carpet? Or are they just gonna?
So how we had planned it is there's actually a little duct tape over there where they've marked the sample. But we're gonna cut up a little piece. It's only about this big of a sample.
Yeah.
So we'll cut it up, not like actually cut off all the carpet, fill it in and then put it back down. So it shouldn't be too noticeable, but the carpets, we did not budget to replace the carpets this year. But that being said, we've been told that, it's come due. So next year it'll be replaced. So it'll be a small disturbance, but just know that that's something we're planning for in early 2020.
It might just be worth looking at, like, getting carpet, even if it's just tacking it back down with glue or whatever, like if you're just doing this room, this is not going to be that expensive. So it might be worth just getting it done. Certainly look into that.
Anyone else have anything pertaining to the building? All right, how about any comments or questions regarding the internet access project update?
So Tom, we had a neighborhood meeting last week, and I heard more than a couple neighbors complaining about it's some cleanup still related to the installs. Have you briefly touched on it, where are we at with that? Is Spectrum going back out and
Yes.
still addressing stuff?
Yes, they are. So they're in your area specifically is not included in the areas that have been paid. So in this case, they won't get the check until they clean it up. So in this case, I can check with you after the meeting to see where they're at with your street specifically, but they should be going out there and making sure that grass is planted, et cetera.
This Tom, is just for you, kind of along those lines. Is there, do we have like a metric that we measure how many times we need to send our people out to go double check work from contractors? Cause we're dealing with that in a different part of town too, but it seems to be kind of an ongoing issue. And so if we're contracting with people, you know, it's like any other service, like if, you know, it's 2 visits out here to make sure that this is right. If we gotta come another time, you know, I don't know whether it's a penalty, I don't know, whatever you call it, but I mean, it seems like, especially, you know, where some of these homes are so far apart or whatever, I mean, that's gonna take a long time for us to go and check all of those things. And check them multiple times seems really silly.
Typically with, well, a couple different items there. With Spectrum, we get the invoice and then we wait for them to tell us that the restoration has occurred. In this case, we just simply, until they tell us that they are 100% confident with the restoration, we do not send our guys back out there. So we did have one instance with one map, one invoice, if you will, not a map, that we did send them out to do the inspection. We had noticed some restoration concerns. We noted them, we gave them back to them. And we said, address this and we'll go back out. So there's only been one instance where we're gonna have to recheck our work. But with other instances, I know that I might have to refer to our Director of Public Works a little bit here for how we go out and make sure that the grading how we close out a grading escrow.
Well,
Or a
in-
special use escrow.
In theory, there's milestone inspections that occur and then they pay for that inspection. So if it's a final inspection, we go out on their request and inspect the work. And if it's not, doesn't meet it's not to our satisfaction, they're notified, they have to correct it, we come back out.
And they, I mean, how do we build them to do that though?
Well, it's set up, it's the intent, and this will change a little bit when we enact our new right-of-way section in theory, which we'll probably be talking about next month. But right now they pay for one inspection, but I think the goal would be that they pay for however many inspections are necessary over the course of that permit.
Yeah.
That's where we really need to be.
Yeah, I mean, I assume they're not, I mean, I imagine that the inspections are not particularly expensive, right, for us to go out.
It's more so the staff time that's taken, when you.
I know, I mean, I know it is, like, I know it takes a amount of time, but I'm saying like whatever the monetary value that these companies are paying, it's not
Oh,
like
yeah.
some
It's
extreme amount of money.
it's like.
Yeah, so I mean, it seems silly, but you know, that adds up if you gotta go out a bunch of times.
Councilmember Clark.
Is there any timeline that, I mean, an agreed upon tentative timeline for doing these things? Or if is it just as long as it's gonna take? And so that it's not, it doesn't keep going on and on and on and dragging on. And I know they don't get paid until it's done, but still, do we have some kind of
They said that-
deadline,
yeah.
tentative deadline?
Yeah, so I had informed them that since we are done with phase 1 construction, it needs to be done by June 31st. So that's what I've told the Spectrum, because that also lines up with the invoices being submitted, it's a 45-day timeline for us to inspect it. So I need also, there's been an agreement to give us some additional time to inspect those areas. Because it's just so many houses and they can't just dump 4 invoices on us and expect our team to be able to put that together in 2 days. So it is something that they should have it all done by June 31st.
Just in terms of the coax thing, I mean, I think getting a number is it's not a bad thing, but I would just caution that like, that technology is not long lasting, so if we're paying for it, we might as well pay to do it right. And I mean, it would be helpful, I guess, to see how much more we would be paying, but that's just my thoughts on it.
I'm mainly gonna just support him. I was thinking the exact same thing, like. They're out there digging everything up anyway, let's just. I mean, I think if it's within the realm of feasibility. Let's just get it done the right way now instead of 2, 3, 5 years. We're like, oh, they're out redigging everything again and then we're going through the same mess, so. yeah.
All right, don't see any other hands up, so we'll move forward. We do have number 2, which is a for action item, an executive closed session regarding individually identifiable personal records, performance ratings or records pertaining to employees or applicants for employment. RSMO 610.012, section 13. But before we go do that, I do have a request that we change the order of the agenda. So do you want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to move that to the end of the
Okay,
meeting.
so you're requesting to move that to the end, and to be specific, looks like probably looks like, would be.
Just after the public work session, I guess.
Right after the public works section, before the topics for inclusion on future agendas.
Sure.
So you're making a motion, and I did see a second by Councilmember Nguyen. So, the discussion, Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, just a point. So when we go into it, that we need to specify that this is RSMO 610.021, not 12.
All right, let's double make sure that is good. Thank you very much for that. So yes, we will do that, and we will address it with the correct subsection. So that motion right now is just to change the order of the agenda. And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained, motion passes. Thank you. So we will proceed now with the next item on the agenda, which is under Public Works. There's a for information item, and this is an update on the Route 100 J-turn project. So well, I'll provide an update on that, and I will pass it over to, I believe, Rick, probably want to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair Giarratano. Members, council members, I wanted to bring you up to date regarding our Route 100 J-turn improvement project. I know you're aware of the project. I guess there's a few things that were important to mention. We are moving forward with design of the improvement project, and we do have two house style public meetings scheduled to obtain resident feedback on the proposed improvements. The first will be tomorrow evening in this room. Thursday evening. Thursday, thank you. That's on Thursday, from 5 to 7, and then we've got another one scheduled for the 13th, 14th. Thank you. Tuesday, the 14th, after the council meeting. Again, in this room. So those are coming up. We've been mailing postcards out to property owners in the vicinity of the improvement projects. And again, this is a project that is proposed to modify Pond Road and Route 100, as well as Wild Horse Creek Road and St. Albans Road, Route E. So it does, if you step back a little bit, it does cover a pretty wide footprint. So we've sent out a fair amount of postcards. And that's probably why we went to 2 meetings. We felt like people show up, and I'm kind of feeling like they might show up. We could fill the room up here pretty quickly with a lot of folks. So those meetings are scheduled, and we're looking forward to getting some good feedback. But I did want to touch on specifically, we may have referenced this in a past meeting. We have a group of residents that live north of Route 100 on Pond Road that have been very active and have expressed their opinions essentially opposed to the recommended improvement to date. They had come in, we met with them a couple times, as part of that as well. And essentially, they by and large are not pleased with the concept that's proposed. And I think the main issue from my sense of the comments was that since they live north of 100, and Brendan, why don't you put the, if you can put the recommended improvement up. Since they live north of 100, they turn left. Generally speaking, most of their trips are probably back to the east, so they're turning left onto Route 100. So with our design, all those folks are going to be forced to turn right, travel down basically 2,000 feet, make the U-turn and come back. And so it is from a distance, a significant amount of travel on their part. And I think that's the main crux of why they're not excited about this improvement project. So hoping we'll be able to show that to you real quick. So to be responsive to the concern, we had our consultant draw up an alternative, which is, I believe, reflective of what they'd like to see. And I think we may have referenced it before, but what they'd like to do is essentially maintain that ability to make a direct left onto Route 100 from Pond Road north of 100. So effectively, you flip the design so that right now, we do allow left turns from 100. With this new option that the residents would like to see, we would allow left turns from the side roads, but not from the main line. The main line lefts would have to use the J-turns. They would go past the intersection, use the J-turn loops and come back. obviously are on the side road and you want to go through, you have to go right, use the J turn and then make a right. So we did draw it up, the consultant put it on paper, and we will have that available tomorrow night, or excuse me, Thursday night at the meeting. I'll probably be here tomorrow night. The way it's going. But we'll have that option for them to review on Thursday evening. And after thinking about this quite a bit, I think the key point that we see with this option, so this, Brendan, which one? This is the consultant recommended improvement. So if top of the window is Pond Road. So the sheet split into two. The bottom half is St. Albans Road and Wild Horse Creek Road. But this, if you can tell, there's quite a bit of widening on the outside of Route 100 at the crossover at Pond Road in the middle at the top. And if you, I don't know if you can zoom in on that at all, Brendan, but it allows the left turns from Route 100. And this is what the consultant came up with. Quite a bit of widening on the outside of 100. In both cases, the J turns are located, the J turn to the west is about 2,000 feet, 1,900, 2,000 feet away. The one to the east and north is to the top of the sheet, of course. So the J turn to the east, to the other direction. Right now, and this is subject to some discussion internally. They've shown it actually just past Community Park, and I'm not sure we're satisfied we want it at that location. Because that was another change that was made. But at any rate, that's the recommended improvement that came out of the study. We'll have this on display for the public at both meetings, and then we will also have available, I don't know if you can pull it up, Brendan, the option. This is only change, the change is only relative to Pond Road at this moment. So this is the change that would retain the left turns from Pond Road. Are you able to get that back, Brendan?
So they would still cross 100 to turn left.
So the side road, yes, they would still cross 100 to make a left.
What would stop people from making a left just anyways off of 100 onto Pond?
The median, are you trying to get it up? Brendan?
Yep.
Okay.
T or option?
The option for Pond Road, if you can, yep. The median would be reconfigured. So there'd be a raised island essentially that you would only be allowed to make the left turn movement. You wouldn't be allowed to go straight through, it would just be blocked out.
Like an awesome way to rip it.
Well, there's always some that might be inclined to try that if you've got a vehicle can do it, but. So what I was trying to show you, if we get it up there, is so with this option, the issue with this option, frankly, is when you turn that left, creating a weaving condition between folks that are trying to use the J turn and the folks that are turning off the side road. So to address the weave, we've added widening in the median on either side of Pond Road, so that additional widening is basically cost. I don't have a figure at this point of how much, but it would be a pretty significant cost, at least the way it's drawn up right now. I actually don't think from a safety standpoint, it would be any less safe. I think you could make the argument it would provide an equal safety benefit of the J term potentially. Although I would have to say, we've asked our consultant to weigh in and provide their opinion. I don't have that in hand yet. But if you look at it from an engineering standpoint, we try to reduce conflict points or points where basically the vehicles can collide. And I think when you look at this with what we proposed, it's about an equal number of conflict points. And so that's kind of on the cursory level, indication that it probably isn't less safe than what we proposed, but it's more expensive. And I think from a traffic standpoint, it's not as good an option. So it's going to be difficult to justify from the cost standpoint because it's definitely going to cost more money to do it.
And then, if you don't mind if I add, Mr. Chair. There's also an understanding where this could make Wild Horse Creek Road along with Highway T, the residents living off those streets say, hey, I want that ability as well,
Right.
which now you're adding the cost 3 times versus the 1. So,
Yeah, maybe I'm misunderstanding. I'm just confused how this fixes any part of what we were trying to fix. Cause you still have people going across traffic.
Well,
Might
you're
be
reducing the number of conflict points over the current configuration, and then you're moving the ones that you have remaining away from each other, so it essentially makes it safer from both those perspectives. So most at-grade intersections can have 30+ conflict points. With this kind of a design, you reduce that in half. So just less options of people colliding into each other, frankly.
Is that like a math equation? Cause I'm doing this in my head and I'm not seeing any,
I can,
this looks exactly the same as what it would be. Basically, other than the cars moving west on 100 can't go left on the pond, but the ones coming on the pond can go left, so they're crossing traffic, and we have these J turns that people are merging into turn, right?
so are you comparing it to our alternative?
No, I'm just looking at because let's say I'm coming from here and I'm going to Wildwood Middle School. No, right now, I would make a left across 100 and go up Pond Road. If this was installed, I would go down the road and come back around, right?
Right.
Most of the problem with making a left on Pond is you've got people coming across
55 mile.
every direction they're coming at you, and I'm just confused how, I know you're not endorsing this plan, it seems, I really don't understand other than, I guess, you can't make 2 additional turns in there, so that sort of saves this, but you have people merging at a different speed anyways, so it all seems like what it is now, just more expensive.
Well, in fact, don't know that I disagree with you. It's definitely more expensive. It's providing direct access from the north, but conversely, it's making it less direct from the south, frankly.
Right.
Because as you said, you would normally just make that left. Now from your south, you're gonna go down, make the J turn and come back. So while the folks on the north side are gonna win, the folks on the south side are gonna have more adverse travel potentially.
Do we have any crash data, like specific data that says, especially where we're crossing 55 mile an hour traffic? Do we have crash data that can talk to the safety implications of it?
yep, in 2019, we had,
Oh, really?
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I'm just thinking out loud that the fatality that.
Yeah, so in that case too, after there was, not to get too far into it, but there was a little bit, there was assumed alcohol involved in that, but it was somebody making a left on Pond, coming off there, and they got hit by a 55, someone going, probably a little bit more than 55, and then there's also been, since 2019, I believe it's 4 additional accidents on top of that led to serious injury at that intersection. And then if you include the ones that are more minor, no injury, but property damage, I think it was something like 11, 12, if I remember correctly, at that intersection alone. And that doesn't include 2023's crash data.
I mean, this is one of the higher locations for serious crashes in the city. You know, that's borne out year after year.
So this is probably, this I think kind of started before I was here. I'm sure that we have just considered putting stoplights in. That seems significantly less expensive and much more easy to understand. Is that a
So
starter?
the signals were not, well, they were considered early on, but they were not warranted based on the traffic volumes. The traffic volumes are not high enough. Generally, signals work best when traffic volumes are more equal throughout the approaches of the intersection. When we did the evaluation a few years back, the volumes at both Pond and at Route T were not high enough to meet MoDOT's warrants for traffic signals. And I will tell you that traffic signals on high-speed expressways, you know, the highest location we have for crashes in Wildwood right now,
I'm sure.
it's right out here.
Yeah.
So if we've got a lot of crashes now, we'll have a lot more with the signal there. So that's the problem with signals is they create more crashes than you have in the prior condition. And a lot of them can be very serious too.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily get rid of all the serious crashes and so they're just not the recommended way to go. I think before we did a signal, and the residents will back me on this, they have suggested we do a roundabout.
Yeah.
That's probably the next direction we would look, I think.
Well, I mean, so, I mean, this is sort of pertaining even to the stuff we're gonna talk about on Old State, like. If we put these J turns in, MoDOT is chipping in some money, right?
It's 80%, yes, 80%.
So if we do that, then. There won't be a roundabout, cause they're not gonna come back and put more money in to do that again, right?
Yeah, but yes, I would maybe say yes, because. Well, I think if you change it now, you definitely are gonna lose, there's a chance you lose the funding. So if you were to change the J turn into now we're doing a roundabout, that is not what was applied for.
Right.
So that could lose that 80% match, and then you don't have a project.
But if we do this, doesn't that lose, is this change it enough?
I don't necessarily agree with the.
I mean, I'm not saying we would do this, I'm just saying if we did, does that also not impact our funding side of things?
This could, but less likely to do so.
It could, but also keep in mind, the additional cost is gonna fall on our shoulders as a city.
Right.
80% of that original amount though is designated.
Would it not similarly work if we just said, hey, a roundabout is, I don't know how much roundabouts cost, $3 million?
The roundabout cost was
I don't
very
know. I
comparable,
wouldn't think so,
frankly.
watch right over the top of it, but it'd be like a Dukes of Hazzard roundabout, that's what we call it.
A crossover jumps.
Yeah,
They do it in the Middle East all the.
I don't know, I mean, I just like, my thought, you know, kind of like we'll get to with the Old State thing, like, I don't wanna take the simple solution that is bad or something that we don't really like as much, just because it's the easy solution at the moment. That doesn't seem like to me the best way to do it, but I am but one voice. So we'll see.
My main goal for bringing this to you is to update you on where we're at, and then my expectation is we're gonna bring it back to you likely. I don't know if it's gonna be the meeting next for May, but after we have the two public meetings, obviously, we're gonna have more feedback to provide to you about how the meetings went, if you haven't already heard that.
You have something?
Oh, well, yeah, you know, from all of the options that are available, the one that you worked with, MoDOT and the engineers on seems to be the one that is the most cost efficient and the safest, without any left turns, because of, you know, I think about my own granddaughter when she was learning to drive and not wanting her to turn left at any of these points at any time, whether that we did it like it's on the board or like it is right now. Turning left is just dangerous there, and anytime it's a T-bone crossover is always more dangerous and higher fatal injuries or serious injuries than the merging type injuries. And I learned that from Rick. So just looking at it, just eliminating all of those seems like the best idea to me. The roundabout's awfully expensive, and if we can't get the funding for that, and plus people are not gonna wanna slow down at that point. They don't drive 55 on that section anyway. They drive much faster. So I know that there's so many people that are giving us this input, and I appreciate all of that. And what we've talked with residents in Ward 1 about, I appreciate their comments, but looking at it as a whole, that whole section, instead of just the Pond Road area, it just seems like, you know, we have to go on the safety side instead of the popular side issue. And so I agree with you that the best option is the one that you, working with the MoDOT, has come up with.
Well, looks like we're waiting some more information on that, so we will wait and see. And as well, you have the open houses coming up that should hopefully provide more feedback. And hopefully you'll have that information too, as far as the added cost. Okay, then we will move on to for action item. We have the first item, which is the cost share proposal for high friction surface treatment on Old State Road. Walk us through that one, and this is for action.
Yeah, Chair Garitano, council members, this is back on the agenda for you for consideration. This information is largely, I believe, the same as was presented previously. It may have been last month. We did have a follow-up conversation with Joe Colessa, St. Louis County, about this proposal by the county, and essentially they are committing about $168,000 towards improvements on Old State. With the caveat that if the city is able to match their funds, they want essentially work to be done on that first option, the lowest segment of the road, option 1, which goes from Route 109 to St. James Court. I did kind of try to show this graphically, and maybe that's worth showing, Brendan, if you can. The information that we got from Joe Colessa that's a little bit different that we didn't have before was the benefit cost ratios. I don't know if we had the costs solidified per option, but the county essentially said, you know, the lowest section from 109 to St. James Court, that's correct, is about 2,600 feet in length. I showed it on yellow. And they calculated a benefit cost ratio. So it's based on the benefit they expect to see in the reduction of crashes and the cost, the BC ratio for that yellow segment was about 7.03. And then beyond that, if the city chose to do more and we wanted to do option 2, that includes the purple, the overall cost, well, our cost would go, let me backtrack. We do option 1, our cost is about $100,000, $103,450. County puts in $167,898. If we decided to do option 1 and option 2, which is really option 2, our costs would go up another $150,000 to $252,950. County would still kick in their $167,989. Benefit cost ratio for the segment 2 is 5.53. Overall, it's 6.46. So it's still very favorable if we chose to do segment, the yellow segment and the purple segment, options 1 and 2. If we want to go beyond that, option 3 is essentially doing the yellow, purple plus the green curve further to the north, which is the curve at Eagle Ridge, I believe, and that is a smaller segment. That option 3 only adds another $75,000 to the overall price tag. We want to do that. Our cost goes up from basically $250 to $325, $328, $150. The benefit cost ratio for that segment 3 is 2.27. It's not as high. It's still well above 1. Overall, it's 5.8. And then the last option is essentially to include the blue in with the other segments. So you do the whole road. Overall cost to the city is almost $800,000. So we're jumping up more than double our responsibility if we chose to do the whole section. And while the overall benefit cost ratio still is favorable, still 3.33, that last segment is below 1. So there really isn't a lot of strong argument in my mind to add in the remaining blue areas. That would be my recommendation, but certainly option 1, 2, and 3 from a benefit cost ratio are still well above 1.0. I think at the last meeting, the question came up relative to the timing, and Joe Colessa basically said he estimated it wouldn't be until next summer when this occurred. It's really ultimately going to be the responsibility of the contracting team to get it done. But he didn't feel like it was likely to get done this summer, based on where we're at. So So he said likely, more likely summer 2025. So I think that's most of the additional information. Again, we have invited Joe to the next meeting for questions. But with that, I'll turn it over to y'all.
Councilmember Hopper.
I mean, maybe I'm gonna be a little bit progressive here, but I think just the opportunity to get something done on Old State is pretty huge, especially for the county to pitch in funds. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and make a motion that we do 1, 2, and 3 and approve that to move forward. Those are, I don't know the area that much. I think those 3 areas would be at least a big step in the right direction for Old State. I know mentioned here talked about guardrails. I think ultimately guardrails are gonna be the thing you're really gonna look at, but this is gonna be a very large project and a lot involved with that. So for us to be able to make a step and in the relative terms, not an immense amount of cost overall related to other projects and things that we do to be able to really address a pretty big area of concern. So I move that we would move forward with options 1, 2, and 3.
Councilmember Jaxi.
I'll second it to open it up to questions. I have a question.
Okay, you seconded, so we've got a motion on the floor for options 1, 2, and 3 made by Councilmember Hopper, seconded by Councilmember Jaxi. So go ahead.
Where are we at budget on this?
None of the expenses related to this project is budgeted for 2020.
So do we have a recommendation?
In this case, there's been significant need, but we would have to have something else kind of fall off the plate here. Recommendation would be either to use the reserve funding to cover this, since it is something that's very important, or get rid of a project from our capital improvement fund. But and I'm not the engineer here, so I will turn it back over to our Director of Public Works, but I would personally advocate, I mean, there is a good argument for option 3, but options 1 and 2, I do think knock out, the majority of the issue here, without having to get into putting up guardrail and also getting to just a more expensive project. So my personal recommendation would be doing options 1 and 2, but it is not budgeted.
I'm pulling that from reserve.
Potentially, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 projects we could kick till another year to make up the capital improvement
Yeah,
program.
isn't this 25 anyways? If they're not gonna do it until 2025, isn't that the 2025 budget?
It's not working the 5-year capital improvement program at this time, but it is something that we could edit as we go into 2025, but it just, at this time, was not programmed for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think it would make sense to see, if it is 2025, then definitely makes sense to do the second option, at least in addition to the first. But that way would have time to program it. And I was going to ask, I mean, it seems like we have a group of residents on Old State who want something badly, and now we hear about another group of residents that don't want a J-turn.
Right.
So any chance we can shift that money? But, that's obviously, it's kind of ironic how that is.
I got some. So I'm all for doing something down there. My only concerns are, how long is this stuff supposed to last? And then does this, if we were to go forward with any part of this, does this take any additional work we would do there and move it to the bottom of the stack because they've done something? You know what I'm saying?
Well, as far as the lifespan, I guess that specific question to Joe Colessa, his answer was it should last 10 years. That's what he told.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like any asphalt treatment. It has a limited life, no doubt about it. But that was his answer.
But I mean, over that, if it works the way it's supposed to, that can do a lot of good in over 10 years. My bigger concern is really moving what is I think a much bigger project all of a sudden vanishes because, well, we did this thing and now you don't need to get the other part of this. Right.
So if we vote on this tonight, is that saying that he will not attend our next meeting, or should we wait until he attends our next meeting and ask him some of these questions? Like, where does that put us if we want guardrails, is does that push us further down the line if we do more or less or whatever? I mean, are we getting ahead of ourselves until, or should we ask him more questions?
Well, you certainly can do that if that's your desire. As far as future improvements, I think the answer is there's nothing programmed at this point in time. And I don't think he's gonna tell you, well, if you do this, we're less likely to do something later. I don't,
I guess I'm more asking your opinion if that is.
It was enough to get him to do this.
I mean, it's taken a lot to get him to this point. It really has, and it's taken a number of people to do that, frankly. So I personally would hate to see you lose the opportunity to get some money from them, but so I don't think it's going to delay. I think the opposite. You keep the pressure on them and at some point they're gonna have to resurface that road again. Probably in 10 years, and I don't think I mean, the thing is, yes, from the standpoint of the guardrail, I don't think you'll see it likely until they resurface that road.
Right.
So that might be 10 years. Getting it earlier than that might be a challenge, frankly. But you never know. You just never really know.
I just know, I mean, it seems like this was a long conversation and then we've got some concerned citizen stuff involved and now we've gotten this, which is great. It's nothing to sneeze at. I just would hate to kill whatever momentum might be there for material fix. But I mean, I'm all for doing this.
I think right now, we know we have 160,000 on the table from the county. That if we put money down, we can get that money in addition. And we'll know the results of this high surface fiction treatment. Maybe it makes a significant difference that maybe there won't be any rails in the future. But I think we have to send a serious message that we take this very serious and are willing to put money on the table to get it done. That's my reply.
I think, no, well, I look at this chart and I'm like, looking at the benefit cost ratio. And they've already made this calculation as to, and they've used data to make this calculation. It's a mathematical formula, which I've talked about many times, that it's so helpful because they've taken these different things and said, how is that gonna help us? How much is it gonna help us compared to the cost of it? And they've already got that for us. So looking at it from my point of view, and they've already collected the data and done the calculation, which in the future, I think that saves so much time to have that done. And I mean, there's a calculation in the highway safety benefit cost analysis or safety counter. I can't even think of what it's called now, but there is you can just go in and plug in the numbers and it comes out. So that is telling me that those top two really need to be done. I always think of over two being something that needs to be done, but the top two especially, I wouldn't be opposed to the third one either, but I think that that's already telling us what the benefit is gonna be from this, from these two sections.
If we did like, say, the first three, then when it's time to resurface again, would they resurface the same way? In other words, if we only do two and then they go to resurface, they're not gonna resurface the third part the way this is. But if we do all three, then when it's their turn to go and resurface the whole road or whatever, would they have to replace like materials? So are we better off to say, the more we do, the more they'll have to replace later at their expense? I don't know.
My understanding is they would not, there's a chance, we would definitely put pressure on them at that time, but they would be paying for the project when they resurface it. And there's a very high likelihood that they wouldn't do the treatment to the same areas. I mean, if this really does have the benefit, I think there would be some common sense, but I don't think we could determine that at this point, because they could just go in and use it.
Just resurface right
Yeah,
away.
just reuse it. Yeah, exactly. So if you cover, I don't think if you cover more, they'll cover more in the future when they do resurface it. I don't think that will
And
impact it.
then are those ratios on a 10-point scale? Like, what is the-
That's a multiplication factor. One is like 100%. So it'd be like, if it was less than one, then it's not benefiting you. If it's over one, So the first segment, that's literally reducing, it's producing safety, reducing crashes by 7x, 700%, which is
That's pretty good.
pretty good.
It's very good. Yeah, the benefits are 7 times the cost.
Yeah.
And I just kind of want to circle back around to with a lot of the comments that everybody's making, I guess, still kind of fighting for this third option. I just think that for $75,000, adding into the top of this, when we've already got committed, we've got money from the county, we're gonna kind of do this anyway. I think it's just good to wipe it all out at one time rather than try to save the 75 grand. Frankly, we've got the money. Let's make the improvement we can for now and see kind of how it goes. Cause it would, honestly, I would feel really terrible if we did 1 and 2. And then they are so much safer, then all of a sudden now I'm 3, we've had 3 more accidents, like, oh, wow. Boy, 75 grand would have been worth it, wouldn't it? You know, so I think it's just getting it done would make a big difference, so.
Okay, you got a motion or?
Yeah, can I just ask a general question? So is there like a number? I know Teresa, you said over 2, but is there like an actual number where normal people would say, anything above this number, you should just do this?
Generally, you look for it to be at a minimum above 1.0.
Okay, so anything over 1 is a good, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, if they can provide us with data for this and a lot of stuff, that could make a lot of these conversations a whole lot easier. Just be like, it's, I mean, if you said it's a 700% thing, that's. Yeah. Alright, we're good.
Okay, with the motion on the floor, seeing no other hands up, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
When opposed or abstain? That motion passes. Okay, so next item on the agenda is under for action, the public dedication of streets in the villages at Brightleaf.
Council members, this next one is the official transfer of the streets, the remaining streets in the villages at Brightleaf, from the developer, essentially over to the city of Wildwood. So this subdivision has been, as you know, away for many years. Previously, we did provide the developer a punch list of items to be repaired to bring the efficiencies up to our standard, and that work has been done for a bit. And all the homes are occupied, so we need to go through the process of formally accepting those streets into our system. Incidentally, Taylor Road was included in our system a few years prior for a separate reason. So that's not included in this request because it's already in our system. So that's why it's not included. So tonight we are trying to start that process. If you guys approved the recommendation, which is to take the 8 streets that I've listed in the memorandum, it's Brightleaf Court, August Grove Court, Autumn Blaze Court, Dragon Place, Red Glory Drive, Sand Cherry Drive, Rising Sun Drive, and Fire Glow Drive. If you guys approve that recommendation to take those into our system, we will develop the legislation to present to City Council at their next meeting. And no further questions.
I'll make the motion. That's all the streets, right, in Brightleaf?
That's correct. That should be all the streets within Brightleaf. And I know the residents still have some remaining concerns with regard to the
Yeah.
basins and such, but that's not related to this request. So that can still be addressed subsequently with Director Vernich.
Motion on the floor by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Hopper. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed or abstain, that motion passes. So that concludes the items under Public Works. So the next item is the item that was rearranged in the order of the agenda. So we will have an executive closed session into individually identifiable personnel records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to employees or applicants for employment. It's RSMO 610.021.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Section 13. So we do need to have a roll call to go into closed session. Need a motion for that. Councilmember Farmer, is there a second? Councilmember Jaxi, So we'll need a roll call on that. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyhan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
and Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Harper, I'm sorry, Hopper,
Yes.
okay. And Chair Garritano.
Yes.
We're gonna switch it.
Okay, so now that that motion is passed, what we'll do is just pause momentarily to allow for tech to be able to pause that, and then I think we will excuse everyone except for the council members.
Rick, did we take over when we did the Taylor Road thing, Brightly? Did we get the medians too, and like all the plants and stuff in there? Was that still the HOA or whatever?
Right,
Go circle back real quick, 'cause the only thing is. Know that RFP had, no, we can, I'll just give it a second. I can take a look at it.
Like right now?
I would feel comfortable, there's no serious agreements or anything that.
Should come back in about 3 minutes.
Yes. thank you. We're back in live, Chair Garrett.
Yep. All right.
Okay, thank
So
you.
anything under miscellaneous? Councilmember Clark.
Yes, I just want to say, I really enjoyed being a part of this group and everybody has kept it really enjoyable and we get along really well. And I think that this has been, as the council has been a really good group to work together and come up with, you know, ideas and plans that we compromise and not compromise for the city, but compromise together so that we come up with the best practice. And I just want to thank everybody here. You guys are all do such a good job. And I have learned from each and every one of you. I thank Bree so much for all of the minutes she takes and writes down quickly. I sit over here and watch her and she's just like working really hard on those minutes and Rick and Thomas and Brennan, we were so happy that you're here. But we, I just want to tell you that I really enjoy working with you and you won't be rid of me. I'll still be around.
I see you, and not just for your baked goods.
Right. Currently, we do have a meeting a week from tomorrow, Tuesday, May 7th, but it is close a week, so I don't know how much the department will come up with in a week's time that we need to review, but we'll keep it right now and then we'll determine hopefully within the next 2 days whether or not we're gonna need it or just wait till June. All right, motion to adjourn. Made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Hopper. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion closed.